Good morning, guys. What's up? It's Ashlyn here. So, here's another day. I haven't put my brace on yet. I can't wear it when I go to sleep, so I'm not gonna wear it right now. I was actually told to only wear it at work now because I was starting to feel like really tense right in here, and it's causing me to get weak. So they said to stop wearing the brace all day, every day, and to start doing breaks in between. Don't wear it to bed. Just wear it when you have to work because I have to do not strenuous activity, but I have to do some activity. So, with that being said, I wanted to show you really quickly what we're keeping so far off of, well, this is the first, second, third shelf, well, the fourth shelf down, um, is my Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children book series, books 1 through 3, I believe, with the extra little pictures that it came with because it's an actual book series. So it came with these photographs to go with the book, which I thought was really, really cool. Like, see, and it's got this and their sign and whatnot. It's got this one. It says Cabe Magoa, the 18-tusked wild beast. So it's got all the different characters and stuff. 12 of them to be exact. Which is really cool because you actually get to see more of the characters than anything. But this is the first 3 in a box set. This is, I think, the first box set I ever bought myself. So, and I'm using it as a stand for the laptop in a second here. Then I have, I'm a huge Ellen Hopkins fan. This is Tricks and Traffic. I have not yet read Traffic. I did read Tricks already. That's why it's turned around in the box set. But this was just another box that I bought because, again, my love for Ellen Hopkins. And then I have the Crank trilogy. I've read all but Fallout so far. So, again, just something that I haven't been able to read yet. So let me move you guys and we'll get into more that I'm keeping and then we'll get into the actual video. By the way, y'all, I just woke up at 6:45 with my boyfriend to get him to make sure he got up for work and everything. I mean, he's grown. He can do it himself. But we just get up together so we have a little bit more time together. I'm finishing my coffee now. He just left about 30-ish minutes ago. My coffee's finally warm. I just did the dishes. My wrist hurts, but I need to just get over that fact. And I love this angle so much better. Yeah. So give me 1 second. Let me drink my coffee. By the way, this says, "Love you to the moon and back." Thought it was cute. My boyfriend got it for me, so yeah. For this portion, I did take my glasses off, by the way. But when I do the reading, I will be putting my glasses back on. So I have Essential 3-ingredient cocktails. It's a 75 classic and contemporary drinks to make at home. We're not going to actually be able to use this much anymore because my boyfriend is trying to quit drinking. So, fingers crossed that we can accomplish that. But we are going to still keep this just in case, there are days that we do want to drink when he's, fully able to control his portion intake. Of course, I have Verity by Colleen Hoover. I cannot get rid of any of my Colleen Hoover books. I love this book so much. Fun fact, there was actually a girl at my job yesterday that was reading a book. And she was reading Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. And as soon as I seen the cover, I was like, oh my gosh, is that Reminders of Him? And she's like, yeah, how did you know? And I'm like, I am a huge Colleen Hoover fan. I said, have you read Verity yet? And she's like, yes, that was the very first book I ever read. And now I'm on this kick of Colleen Hoover books. And I'm like, go to Walmart, sit down in the book section. You don't want to spend $25 on that book just to read the excerpt of the extended chapter. But go to Walmart, sit in the book section, and read it, and tell me what you think. And she's like, you know what? I might have to take you up on that. She's like, because I didn't like how Verity was. And I was like, neither did I. And then I got to the ending and I was like, interesting. So, alright, next I have Flirting with My Monsters by Ellen Hopkins. This was more of like a writing concept book. Yeah, I don't know. Says we enter this world with innocent needs, sustenance, shelter, nurturing, connection. We grow, learning through rewards to want. Toys, cars, money, connection. When reward becomes the goal, want becomes desire. Drugs, booze, sex, connection. When desire becomes need, desperation follows. Disconnection. Like more than just a broken line. Like I actually went through and actually highlighted some of this stuff. That's how good this was. Next I have How to Eat Like a Hot Chick by Jody Lipper and Serena Vincent. And I, as you see, have so many things saved. Like for instance, beer before liquor, never been sicker. I learned that one. My family actually taught me that. Mixing mistakes. Like there's so many things in here that were really eye-opening for me. Next, I have The Suicide House by Charlie Donlea. This is the very first book I ever read by Charlie Donlea, and I cannot wait to continue reading more. I have found a couple more, but I haven't been able to get my hands on them quite yet. But this was really, really good. None of my Stephen King books are going to go, so with that being said, I have The Outsider and Sleeping Beauties that we're keeping, because hello, Stephen King, duh. I bought Warrior Goddess Training, Become the Woman You Are Meant to Be by Heathrash Amara. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I need to go back through actually and reread it and actually like highlight things and everything else. I listened to it in audiobook and then I found it on Thrift Books. So I picked it up. And last but not least, I have Agatha Christie, The Clocks. It's a little mass market paperback. And that gets me to, that is everything we're keeping so far off of the first shelf and the fourth shelf down of that lovely thing right there. That stack right there is also all keep, but we went over that yesterday, or not yesterday, a couple days ago. And that video will be coming up very, very shortly if it's not already up. Now we're going to get into this stack. I have 2, 4, 6, 7 mass market paperbacks from the top shelf, the very first shelf. So let's get into those with the first chapter section. Alright, so this first book is Nicholas Sparks' Dear John. I'm just going to read the prologue. Probably by now everybody knows what this book all entails. If you have read the movie, it may be a little bit different than the movie, but yeah. So we're just going to read the prologue of it. The first chapter is like 20 pages, just so you know. So, and it's in parts as well. Alright, so first it says, Dear John, the letter read, and with those 2 words, a heart was broken and 2 lives changed forever. When Savannah Lynn Curtis comes into his life, John Tyree knows he is ready to turn over a new leaf. An angry rebel, he had enlisted in the army after high school, not knowing what else to do. Then, during a furlough, he meets Savannah, the girl of his dreams. The attraction is mutual and quickly grows into the kind of love that leaves Savannah vowing to wait for John while he finishes his tour of duty. But neither can foresee that 9/11 is about to change the world. Like so many proud men and women, John must choose between love and country. Now, when he finally returns to North Carolina, John will discover how love can transform us in ways we never could have imagined. Funny thing about North Carolina, that's where my boyfriend's from, so I love books where they say, like, Ohio or Kansas or North Carolina or, like, anything that deals with the person that you're currently with. So cute. Okay. So it says, Lenore, 2006, prologue. What does it mean to truly love another? There was a time in my life when I thought I knew the answer. It meant that I cared for Savannah more deeply than I cared for myself, and that we'd spend the rest of our lives together. It wouldn't have taken much. She once told me that the key to happiness was achievable dreams, and hers were nothing out of the ordinary. Marriage, family, the basics. It meant I'd have a steady job, the house with a white picket fence, and a minivan or SUV big enough to haul our kids to school or to the dentist or off to soccer practice or piano recitals. 2 or 3 kids, she was never clear on that, but my hunch is that when the time came, she would have suggested that we let nature take its course and allow God to make the decision. She was like that, religious, I mean, and I suppose that was part of the reason I fell for her. But no matter what was going on in our lives, I could imagine lying beside her in bed at the end of the day, holding her while we talked and laughed, lost in each other's arms. It doesn't sound so far-fetched, right? When 2 people love each other? That's what I thought too. And while part of me still wants to believe it's possible, I know it's not going to happen. When I leave here again, I'll never come back. For now, though, I'll sit on the hillside overlooking her ranch and wait for her to appear. She won't be able to see me, of course. In the Army, you learn to blend into your surroundings, and I learned well because I had no desire to die in some backward foreign dump in the middle of the Iraqi desert. But I had to come back to this small North Carolina mountain town to find out what happened. When a person sets a thing in motion, there's a feeling of unease, almost regret, until you learn the truth. But of this I am certain. Savannah will never know I've been here today. Part of me aches at the thought of her being so close yet so untouchable, but her story and mine are different now. It wasn't easy for me to accept this simple truth, because there was a time when our stories were the same, but that was 6 years and 2 lifetimes ago. There are memories for both of us, of course, but I've learned that memories can have a physical, almost living presence, and in this, Savannah and I are different as well. If hers are stars in the nighttime sky, mine are the haunted empty spaces in between. And unlike her, I've been burdened by questions I've asked myself 1,000 times since the last time we were together. Why did I do it? And would I do it again? It was I, you see, who ended it. On the trees surrounding me, the leaves are just beginning their slow turn toward the color of fire, glowing at the sun peaks over the horizon. Birds have begun their morning calls, and the air is perfumed with the scent of pine and earth, different from the brine and salt of my hometown. In time, the front door cracks open, and it's then that I see her. Despite the distance between us, I find myself holding my breath as she steps into the dawn. She stretches before descending the front steps and heads around the side. Beyond her, the horse pasture shimmers like a green ocean, and she passes through the gate that leads toward it. A horse calls out a greeting, as does another, and my first thought is that Savannah seems too small to be moving so easily among them. But she was always comfortable with horses, and they were comfortable with her. A half-dozen nibble on grass near the fence post, mainly quarter horses and Midas. Her white-socked black Arabian stands off to one side. I rode with her once, luckily without injury, and as I was hanging on for dear life, I remember thinking that she looked so relaxed in the saddle that she could have been watching television. Savannah takes a moment to greet Midas now. She rubs his nose while she whispers something. She pats his haunches, and when she turns away, his ears perk up as she heads toward the barn. She vanishes, then emerges again, carrying 2 pails, oats, I think. She hangs the pails on 2 fence posts, and a couple of the horses trot toward them. When she steps back to make room, I see her hair flutter in the breeze before she retrieves the saddle and bridle. While Midas eats, she readies him for her ride, and a few minutes later she's leading him from the pasture toward the trails in the forest, looking exactly as she did 6 years ago. I know it isn't true. I saw her up close last year and noticed the first fine lines beginning to form around her eyes, but the prism through which I view her remains for me unchanging. To me, she will always be 21, and I will always be 23. I've been stationed in Germany. I had yet to go to Fallujah or Baghdad or receive her letter, which I read in the railroad station in Samawa in the initial weeks of the campaign. I had yet to return home from the events that changed the course of my life. Now, at 29, I sometimes wonder about the choices I've made. The Army has become the only life I know. I don't know whether I should be pissed or pleased about that fact. Most of the time, I find myself going back and forth, depending on the day. When people ask, I tell them I'm a grunt, and I mean it. I still live on base in Germany. I have maybe $1,000 in savings, and I haven't been on a date in years. I don't surf much anymore, even on leave, but on my days off, I ride my Harley north or south, wherever my mood strikes me. The Harley was the single best thing I've ever bought for myself, though it cost a fortune over there. It suits me, since I've become something of a loner. Most of my buddies have left the service, but I'll probably get sent back to Iraq in the next couple of months. At least those are the rumors around base. When I first met Savannah Lynn Curtis, to me, she'll always be Savannah Lynn Curtis. I could never have predicted my life would turn out the way it has or believed I'd make the Army my career. But I did meet her. That's the thing that makes my current life so strange. I fell in love with her when we were together, then fell deeper in love with her in the years we were apart. Our story has 3 parts, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And although this is the way all stories unfold, I still can't believe that ours didn't go on forever. I reflect on these things, and as always, our time together comes back to me. I find myself remembering how it began. For now, these memories are all I have left. Oh, so it's about a love story that fell apart, and we're going to find out why. So we're definitely going to keep that. I mean, come on. How can you not? If you guys have seen the movie, you'll understand. Alright, next we have Alyssa Cole, When No One Is Watching. Says Rear Window meets Get Out in this gripping thriller from a critically acclaimed and New York Times notable author in which the gentrification of a Brooklyn neighborhood takes on a sinister new meaning. Sydney Green is Brooklyn born and raised, but her beloved neighborhood seems to change every time she blinks. Condos are sprouting up like weeds, for sale signs are popping up overnight, and the neighbors she's known all her life are disappearing. To hold on to her community's past and present, Sydney channels her frustration into a walking tour and finds an unlikely and unwanted assistant in one of the new arrivals to the block, her neighbor, Theo. But Sydney and Theo's deep dive into history quickly becomes a dizzying descent into paranoia and fear. Their neighbors may not have moved to the suburbs after all, and the push to revitalize the community may be more deadly than advertised. When does coincidence become conspiracy? Where do people go when gentrification pushes them out? Can Sydney and Theo trust each other or themselves long enough to find out before they too disappear? So it sounds interesting. It says it's a thriller. I mean, that is beautiful. Just saying. But we're about to find out. So if you guys are with me, there is 14 pages on the first chapter, but there is a prologue. So depending on how the prologue goes, I'll decide if I want to read the first chapter or not. Alright, prologue. Sydney. History is effing wild. Last fall, on a night when my ass was getting well acquainted with the uncomfortable guest chair in my mommy's hospital room, I had numbly tapped and swiped my way to an article about a place called Black America. Not the label politicians use to place their concerns into a neat box full of worries they don't have to attend to immediately or ever, but an actual tangible place, a slavery theme park that opened in Brooklyn at the end of the 19th century. Slavery effing theme park? Black America at the theme park was billed as an opportunity to become familiar with plantation life for those of the North who belong to a generation to which the word slavery has but an indefinite and hazy meaning. This was like 20 years after slavery ended, mind you. I mean, I too get nostalgic when an 80s jam starts playing on the radio, but these mother effers really needed to reminisce about owning humans. It was the those of the North part that really annoyed me. The North does not remember. In fact, the North has a super selective effing memory, as if slavery was something that happened down there. Even though there were enslaved Africans building, planting, and harvesting in colonial Brooklyn alongside the Dutch, people bury the parts of history they don't like, pave it over like African cemeteries beneath Manhattan skyscrapers. Nothing stays buried in the city, though. Anyway, Black America. White people came to Brooklyn to tour the faithfully recreated plantation. They sang along to Negro spirituals and took refreshment as they watched free black people, pretend to be slaves. History, wild. After I stumbled onto that article, Brooklyn history became a refuge for me. It blotted out thoughts of my failed marriage and the persistent sense memory of restraints chafing my wrist. It was something to focus on besides my mother's illness and the way everything was changing. Everything. No matter how much I wanted the world to stop spinning for just 1 minute. I decided to pay for one of those expensive-ass historic Brooklyn brownstones tours. I'd lived in one of the beautiful old buildings for most of my life, apart from those few years in Seattle, but I needed a distraction and maybe an outlet for my frustrations. A Groupon discounted tour with a meeting point 2 blocks from my front door had been cheaper than therapy and 1,000 times easier to get an appointment for. I wanted to know what the tour guide said about us as they led crowds over the cracked blue slate sidewalks of Gifford Place. I wanted to know what the tourists were oohing and ahhing over when they clustered in front of our houses, looking through the present inhabitants in search of long-dead grandeur. 1 second. My neighbors suck. Just saying. 1 second. Really quick, upon looking at the mass market paperbacks I have Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King and Firestarter by Stephen King, and these are not going anywhere, so we're just going to automatically put those in the pile because we know we want to keep those. Sorry to sidetrack, but that needed to be said. And I'm waiting on my neighbors to still leave so I can actually start the video and read again because they're so loud. You hear that slam? Thank gosh. Okay. It was a day that actually felt like autumn. Are you fucking kidding? Okay. Sorry. It was a day that actually felt like autumn, the weather cool enough to wear a cute blazer and the oak trees lining Gifford Place ablaze in golden red. I was struck by how beautiful my neighborhood was, bathed in these warm hues that contrasted so well with the brick and brownstone exteriors. How beautiful it had always been despite decades of being ignored. Neglect had shielded us in a way, and watching strangers stroll through in their comfortable sneakers with Nikons hanging around their necks felt like our walls had been breached and the horde was marching in. The tour guide, Zephyr, was pale with a brown bob and a British accent that gave her a sense of cheery authority, though it seemed like she'd just memorized some Wikipedia facts. She didn't know shit about my neighborhood, really, but she didn't need to. The tourists weren't there to hear about Mommy's community garden or the time someone left a snake and some tarot cards on Miss Candace's stoop when they thought she was talking shit about them. They didn't want an anthropological deep dive into the relationship between bodega owner and lotto enthusiast or an oral history of stoop usage. Zephyr was just fine for them. She pointed down the tree-lined street and asked us to imagine the Brooklyn of old. I stared at the spots where I'd skinned my knees, rollerblading and gotten tangled up in double Dutch ropes, but Zephyr had meant old, cobblestone roads and horse-drawn carriages and homes owned by the elite of the elite old. It was probably easy to do for the people on the tour. The street was quiet and almost empty, as if my neighbors had sensed the approach of the interlopers and retreated into the safety of their homes. We started to walk, the leaves crunching beneath our shoes, serving as the beat under Zephyr's sing-song voice. And this is the former Gifford Medical Center, originally the Rosendale Sanitarium, completed in 1830 and shuttered in 2005. She said as we stepped into the street to bypass the chain link fence surrounding the building where I was born. The architecture was still striking, even with the boarded up windows, but I'd known it as Medical Center, the hospital where either incompetence or ghosts would F you up, so I wasn't impressed. This building has recently been the center of controversy as it's one of the proposed sites for the next Verintech Pharmaceuticals campus, Zephyr said. There have been protests by community activists who don't want the company here, despite the promise of hundreds of new jobs and a revitalization of the area. Those against the campus are also upset that an opiate research center is being placed in a community that they feel was over-policed during their own drug epidemic. And it was a bit more complicated than that. My best friend, Drea, worked for the city and had been keeping me and Mommy informed of what would happen if Verintech chose our neighborhood, and none of it was good. Not for us. These people are never satisfied, a white man with graying hair grumbled. I glared at him, and so did a few other people, but he didn't seem to care. Zephyr ignored him and ushered us on. As we stopped in front of each brownstone, she'd carefully detailed the lives of the rich white people who'd lived there 100 years ago. What food they'd eaten, what kind of clothing they'd worn, the parties they'd thrown. That was all well and good, but as the tour pressed on, my frustration, my anger at being erased from my own life in so many ways I'd lost count, pushed my hand up into the air like the teacher's bane I'd been long ago, before I'd learned curiosity killed the cat. Zephyr narrowed her gaze at me for just a second, perhaps sensing my petty intentions before saying, yes. So the stuff about the Vanderhoosits is cool, but the woman who lives here now was the first black female head of an engineering firm, I said peevishly. Oh, thanks for that tidbit. She waved the tour onward, and I followed, smirking, because annoying people with history they didn't want to acknowledge was kind of fun. We stopped in front of Mr. Joe's house, and Zephyr talked about some architect named Frederick Langston. The current owner is a jazz musician who traveled all over the world playing with some of the greats. I cut in. He gives music lessons to children now. That's cool. Who'd he tour with? The question came from a tall, solidly built white guy with dirty blonde hair, a heavy brow, and ridiculous cheekbones. He asked quickly, as if purposely trying to get the question in before Zephyr could talk over me. His gaze was focused, and something about the way he waited intently for a response threw me off. His girlfriend, a short, high ponytailed Lululemon type, nudged him with her elbow. Theo, stop disrupting the tour. She chided as if he just dropped his pants to his ankles instead of asking a question, then looked in my direction as if her words also applied to me. The I wish mother effer would, simmered in my veins at the familiar condescension in her eyes. For a moment, Ponytail Lululemon's face morphed into that of the nurse. He'd looked me dead in the eye and said my mother didn't need more pain meds, even as Mommy Britton wailed in the bed beside us. I appreciate the bonus information. It's quite helpful. Zephyr cut in, her tone showing she didn't appreciate it at all. But this tour is about historically important people. This is a historically black neighborhood, but none of the important people you've mentioned thus far have been. What does that mean? Her face flushed, but she hit me with a customer service mop. Look, miss, I'm just doing my job. If you have a problem with this tour, you can send suggestions to the organizers. Or maybe you should, I don't know, start your own? She said cheerily, then smoothly returned to her script. I pursed my lips, nodded, turned and crossed the street, heading to the bodega to get an egg and cheese on a roll and a coffee, light and sweet. Comfort food. Abdul was on the phone behind the counter, arguing with his landlord about how he couldn't afford another rent hike, which didn't help my mood, though playing with Frito, the store's resident cat, did. I walked by the group a few minutes later as they learned about filigree or some shit, then jogged up the steps to my mother's house and turned the key in the lock with more force than was necessary. The advertising flyers shoved into the crack between the door and the jamb fluttered to the ground. Sell your house for big money. We pay cash. Quick and easy sales. Screamed the card scattering around my feet. The one closest to the toe of my boot from a company called Good Neighbors LLC had the tagline, "We care about your future." Zephyr's voice faded into the background as I snatched the flyers and crumpled them up. I wanted to turn and throw the wad at the tour group to chase them away. I wanted to call the police and report strange people who might be casing the neighborhood for a break-in, like some new neighbors had done the previous week. Police had shown up and harassed a man who'd lived here for 20 years. Logic prevailed. That shit wouldn't fly for me. I already knew how easy it was for authorities to believe someone like me was a problem to be locked away. One wrong move on my end, and the vultures circling Mommy's house could get what they wanted all the sooner. I glanced over my shoulder as I stepped into the foyer, mostly so Zephyr could see that this was my house, no matter who had lived here in the 19th century, and caught the heavy-browed guy watching me intently. I closed the door firmly in his face. Welcome to the Our Hood app, helping neighbors stay connected and stay safe. You have been approved as a member of the Gifford Place community. Please use the site responsibly and remember that each one of us can make our neighborhood a better place. So I don't like this. I'm just going to be real here. I really don't like this. I think it's disgusting. It's racist. It talks about slavery. It's terrible. I don't even want to continue reading this. That's how bad this is. So this one, this book right here, I'm good. That is our first bye situation. Like, I don't know if you guys could tell when I was reading that prologue alone, not even the first chapter, the prologue alone, that I was just disgusted by what I was reading. So, I don't know who that was. That was weird. With that being said, we're just going to skip to the next one, which is a Heather Graham. It's called The Uninvited. I got it for 75 cents at a thrift store. So you can never go wrong with that. So it says, a Philadelphia mansion plays host to uninvited death. 1777, in the throes of the Revolutionary War, Landon Mansion is commandeered by British Lord Butcher Bedford. He stabs Lucy Tarleton, who spurned his king and his love, leaving her to die in her father's arms. Now, after the day's final tour, docent Allison Lee makes her rounds while locking up and finds a colleague slumped over Bedford's desk, impaled on his own replica bayonet. Resident ghosts may be the stock in trade of stately Philadelphia homes, but Allison, a noted historian, is indignant at the prospect of ghost hunters investigating this apparent murder. Agent Tyler Montague knows his hauntings and his history, but while Allison is skeptical of the newcomer, a second mysterious murder occurs. Has Butcher Bedford resurfaced, or is there another malevolent force at work in Landon Mansion? Wary yet deeply attracted, Allison has to trust in Tyler and work with him to discover just what uninvited guest, dead or alive, has taken over the house, or their lives could become history. Gonna be honest, that doesn't sound that inviting. See what I did there? So, I mean, I know it's a Heather Graham and everything, but like, why is it 22 pages for the first chapter? Why? I don't get that. Why is the first chapter like bam, always in your face? I love shorter chapters, like 5 pages for a first chapter. Perfect. I feel like you put like over 10 pages, you're just asking to put too much information at one moment. Just saying, just my personal opinion. We still have 2 books to go, and we're already at 32 minutes, so it's gonna be like an hour video, and I'm so sorry for it, but we need to get through this. I just realized I might be messing up my reading because I'm not wearing my glasses. I think this time around, I'm gonna wear my glasses and see if I do better. Alright. It was a beautiful time of day, close to dusk, at a beautiful time of year, early fall. Philadelphia's Tarleton Dandridge house set back from the street, majestic and stately, in the light that had just begun to fade, as fine and poignant as an old building could be, a proud remnant of an era long gone, yet ever remembered. Julian Mitchell almost felt guilty. Almost. He couldn't quite manage guilt, but he was too ecstatic over his day, still pumped with enthusiasm and the beat of the music he'd been playing. He enjoyed being a guide at the Tarleton Dandridge, but today he had to ditch it. The audition had been impromptu, important, and much as he loved his job, he loved the idea of working full-time as a guitarist more. Sure, it was great dressing up and playing with the band in Old Town, but he had dreams of being a real rock star. Now, however, he had to slip back into the house and suck up to Allison. She was their unofficial leader, head of the guides or docents at the Tarleton Dandridge, and if she forgave him, the others would too. He saw that one group of guests had already entered the house with their guide, and that another, the last group of the day, was assembling just outside the main door. He could see Allison lean to the side of the house near the gate, welcoming those who were gathering for the final tour. Allison was dressed in the typical fashion of the Revolutionary era, the typical high fashion of the Revolutionary era, since female guides wore clothing along the lines of that which would have been worn by Lucy Tarleton, the martyred heroine of the house. The male guides dressed as Lord Brian Bradford Bradley, the British general known as Beast Bradley, who had occupied the house. They all looked pretty cool in their clothing, he thought, but especially Ellison. She was beautiful to begin with, even if she was kind of a nerd. A real academic, but she did bear a resemblance to the heroine she played, Lucy Tarleton. They'd all remarked on her resemblance to the painting in the house and those in various museums, but there was no evidence that she was a descendant of the woman. And if anyone would know, Allison would, since she was a historian. Maybe it was the clothing that gave her the look. Allison wasn't even glancing his way, so he quickly jumped the old brick wall that surrounded the house. He was still in his period clothing from the morning shift. He hadn't sneaked out until after lunch. Luckily, his band's audition had been to open for the new It group, rockers who liked to dress up like Patrick Henry and friends, which meant he hadn't had to worry about auditioning in his work outfit. Of course, he hadn't asked for the time off. He decided that in life it was generally better to do and ask forgiveness later than it was to beg for permission and get a big fat no. What guilt he did feel was because one of his colleagues had to take the tour group he should have led. Still, he had a plan. He'd wait until the last group had gone through and Jason and Allison had finished for the day. He winced. He realized Annette wasn't at work. She'd made an appointment for a root canal, but he knew his fellow descendants as well as they knew him. Jason would leave before Allie. Julian just had to wait until Jason had left and Allison was alone, checking as she always did that the doors were locked and the alarm system was on. She would come down to Angus's study, ye old study, where that poor bastard Angus Tarleton had died, supposedly of a broken heart, to make sure no kids were hiding under the desk to spend the night in the haunted house. He'd wait for her there. When Allie showed up, he would beg and plead, and he could honestly tell her they'd probably get the gig, and he'd do anything to compensate for the time he'd missed, and he'd promised her backstage passes to the first concert. He tiptoed to the front door and listened. Once Jason's tour had moved into the social rooms to the left, he hurried up the stairs. But when he reached the second floor landing, he heard conversation and footsteps coming down from the attic. He dodged into Lucy Tarleton's room. He'd forgotten the board was meeting at the house that day. He'd have to wait until they were gone. At last they were. He heard the foursome going down the main stairway. As usual, they were bickering among themselves. Cherry, you may be a descendant of the family, but this place is owned by Old Philly history now. We're only the board. She started to speak, but Ethan Oxford interrupted her. Yes, it's privately owned and operated, but there's a charter. The house was donated for the preservation of history. Old Ethan Oxford was the senior member of the board. Sherry's mother had been the last of the Dandridge family. Cherry would probably have eschewed her own father's name to take on Dandridge. Julian was certain, except that her husband, George Addison, was becoming a very well-known artist, and she liked the prestige that came with being Miss Addison. No one knows this house like I do, Cherry insisted. Really? You never lived in it? It was handed over to Old Philly history long before you were born. Julian smiled. That voice belonged to Nathan Pearson, who loved to listen sweetly to Cherry and then zing her. Hush, there are tour groups in here. A moment later, even their voices faded away as they left the house. Julian started toward the attic but paused. For some reason, he had the odd sensation of being held in the room, and he turned around, curious. He saw nothing there. Nothing except the painting of Beast Bradley. The nice painting of Bradley. They say you were a brutal bastard. Glad someone saw the good in you, Julian said, giving himself a mental shake. He dashed up to the attic to hide. He sat at the desk there, glancing at the piles of paper around the computer and the countless file folders. Some of the information here was pure business, schedules, events planned at the estate, programs planned, money collected, but most of the piles belonged to Allie. Professor Allison Lee. You would have to be a brainiac, he said aloud. He was a year or two younger than Allie, but he'd had a crush on her since he'd taken his position here. And she wasn't all work and no play. He knew because she dated another musician for a while, an acquaintance of his. You may have brains, Allie, but your taste in men isn't so great. It was one thing to have a casual friendship with a drug addict. It was another to date one. Allie's romance had ended when she realized she couldn't compete with his cocaine habit. Ah, well, history seemed to be her true love. He picked up the nearest folder and began to read. Huh, he murmured. Apparently she found a new lead on an old subject. To his own surprise, he became interested in her notes. Allie definitely seemed to be onto something. He set down the folder and listened carefully. It was safe to go down to the second floor, he decided, since Jason's tour group had departed. Jillian hurried back to Lucy's bedroom. There was a beautiful rendering of a young Lucy on one wall. She was dressed in white and had a look of open excitement in her eyes as if she loved life and the whole world. It had been an 18th birthday gift to Lucy from Levy Perry, an artist killed at Brandywine. Naturally, it was painted before either of them had learned about the horrors of war. He turned from the image of Lucy and stared at the painting of Beast Bradley again. Charmer, were you? Well, that's not what history says. As soon as he could, he'd go down to Angus's study and wait for Allie. If she gave him any grief, he could tell her he'd read her notes about Bradley and Lucy, and they were brilliant, just brilliant. Interesting that the painting of Beast Bradley in the study was nothing like this one. He smiled. He'd have the chance to stare at that one for a while, because he wanted to be in Angus's chair when Allie found him. He was dressed as Beast Bradley. Why not play the part completely as he begged her to forgive him? It was a perfect way to convince her that he was serious about his job here, at least until his music career was well and truly launched. Leaving Lucy's bedroom, he reached the door and thought he heard a noise behind him, but that was impossible, unless it was good old Beast Bradley himself, roused from the dead to rummage through the research papers. Tiptoeing down the stairs, he left. He opened the hall closet on the first floor to pick up the reproduction muzzle-loading musket and bayonet that went with his uniform. He heard a noise again and frowned. It couldn't be coming from the attic. No, he told himself. The rustling was probably outside. I ain't afraid of no ghost, he muttered, and yet it was with great unease that he waited. He felt he was being watched and followed. I don't like it. I don't like it. It sounds really boring, and I'm not into like the Revolutionary War era type deal, so there's that too. Alright, next we got Christy Ridgway, The Thrill of It All. I have no idea what this is about. It's got a couple on the cover. It was another like pickup. Give me 1 second though. It's 20 pages, so get ready, guys. Really quick, while I take a really quick break, I need to get more coffee, and you guys just get a snack, get a drink, something, and I'll be right back. By the way, if you made it this far into the video, I really appreciate everything that you do for me, so hit the like button, please, and share with your friends if this is something that they're into. I know not everybody likes, try chapters where we actually read the chapter to you, but I'm just trying this because I enjoy it and I need to go through my bookshelf, so you're going to get these episodes until I'm through my entire bookshelf. Alright, y'all, sorry about that. I am back. I gotta go take care of something. So it says, this is like a little prologue. His hand slid up her arm and hauled her closer. She held herself very still. He couldn't know, could he, that every tender place on her body was throbbing, and she refused to give him the satisfaction of knowing how well his deviltry worked. Go ahead, dollface, he said softly, his fingers caressing. Say no. Took everything she had to wrench away from him. No, I will not fall for you chicanery again. Maggie blinked. My chicanery? This game that you play. I think you're good at this thrill business, and that you enjoy how you can make me respond. Yes, that's something. Being good at this thrill business. But how come your response is my fault? Because it's obvious you're doing something to mess me up. My head rules my hormones. My brain commands my body. The fact is, I have a short list of qualities that interest me in a man, and nothing about you, Maggie, is on it. I don't know about this. This one just doesn't sound good. But we're going to read 20 pages, so let's hope we can get through 20 pages without going. There was more dazzle in the Las Vegas ballroom than a convention of crest-white strippers on a glitter factory tour. Ultraviolet smiles snapped on and off like flash bulbs, their beams catching in the diamond-drop chandeliers overhead and in the facets of the cut crystal stemware on the snowy tablecloths. Celine's show at Caesar's Palace was dark that night, but Celine herself was still I'm gonna be honest, this doesn't entice me, not even in the least, not even the first page, not even the prologue or anything, just no. So we're gonna get to the last book. and that is Catherine Center's Things You Save in a Fire. I've been looking for this book forever. Okay. Cassie Hanwell was born for emergencies. As one of the only female firefighters in her Texas firehouse, she's seen her fair share of them, and she's a total pro at other people's tragedies. But when her estranged and ailing mother asks her to give up her whole life and move to Boston, Cassie suddenly has an emergency of her own. The tough old-school Boston firehouse is as different from Cassie's old job as it could possibly be. Hazing, a lack of funding, and poor facilities mean that the firemen aren't exactly thrilled to have a lady on the crew, even one as competent and smart as Cassie, except for the infatuation-inspiring rookie who doesn't seem to mind having Cassie around, but she can't think about that because love is girly and it's not her thing. And don't forget the advice her old captain gave her: never date firefighters. Cassie can feel her resolve slipping, and it means risking it all. The only job she's ever loved, and the hero she's worked like hell to become. Alright. Let's see here. For every woman who has ever had to be brave, and for the folks in the world who make a choice to be helpers. Alright, this one's only 11 pages for the first chapter, so that's not bad. The night I became the youngest person and the only female ever to win the Austin Fire Department's Valor Award, I got propositioned by my partner. Propositioned. At the ceremony, in the ballroom, during dinner, by my partner. There we all were, the entire B shift from Station 11, in our dress uniforms, using salad forks, and there I was, in my crisscross tie, getting more and more nervous at the prospect of having to walk up on that stage in front of all those people, under all those lights. The winter before, a busload of school children had slid off an icy road into a ravine, and I had climbed inside to push the kids out through a window one by one as the water rose. That's why we were here. The newspapers were calling me the school bus angel. And Hernandez, of all people, chose this moment to hit on me. Hernandez, my partner of 3 years. Hernandez, who I'd never once thought of that way. Hernandez, who was so perfectly mechanically handsome that he didn't even register as handsome anymore. He was like a Latino firefighting Ken doll, so bizarrely perfect. He wasn't even real. He lifted weights and flossed and preened, and he used his washboard stomach and perfectly aligned white teeth to snare more unsuspecting ladies than I could count. He wasn't just in our department's calendar, he was on the cover. Picture perfect Hernandez, the last guy on earth I would ever think of as anything other than a health food eating, CrossFit training ladies man, leaned over close to my ear right there at the banquet table and asked me to spend the night with him. Maybe tonight's the night, he said. I kept chewing. I honestly didn't see it coming. Tonight's the night for what? He looked at me like, duh, to finally do something about all that sexual tension. I looked around to see if the other guys had heard him. He had to be joking. Somebody had to be making a video or taking a photo or poised to jump out and start laughing. There was no way this was anything but an epic firehouse candid camera prank. I surveyed the rest of the crew, pranksters all, but everybody was just sawing away at their chicken. I decided to call Hernandez's bluff. Okay, I said. Great idea. He lifted his eyebrows and looked delighted. Really? I gave him a look like, come on. No, not really. I'm serious, he said, leaning closer. You're not. He gave me a look like, and who are you to judge? I gave him one back like, you know exactly who I am. Then I said, you're never serious about anything, especially women. But you're not a woman. You're a firefighter. Yet another reason I never go home with you. I think you want to. Shook my head. Nope. Deep down? Nope. I could dare you, Hernandez said. Never back down from a dare, but I shook my head like, not even that, buddy. I don't date firefighters, and neither do you. This would hardly be a date. I told him in my head, you're like my brother, dude. I can work with that. I flared my nostrils. Gross. Seriously, why not? I squinted at him. Was he serious? Could he possibly be serious? I glanced up at the stage. In a few minutes, they were going to start the awards ceremony. This was a big night for me. Huge. The biggest night of my career. Did we really have to do this now? We work together, man, I said. I shouldn't even have to say it. Firefighters don't date other firefighters. It's not just against the rules. It's against the culture. He didn't care. I'd never tell. That doesn't change anything. He gave me a serious, evaluating look. You need to let yourself have some fun. You're not my kind of fun. He leaned in a little closer. You never date anybody. How is that possible? It's such a waste of a good woman. Stop holding back. I'm not holding back. I'm just not interested. He glanced down at himself approvingly and then met my eyes. You're interested. Shook my head. You've thought about it, he said. Pretty sure I haven't. He lowered his voice. You're thinking about it now, though, aren't you? Not in a good way. You need to stop living like a nun. What if I'm the cure for all your loneliness? That got my attention. I stabbed a carrot in my salad. I'm not lonely. He frowned like I was certifiably insane. Guess what? You're the loneliest person I know. To be honest, that smarted a little. I pointed at him with my fork. I am self-sufficient. I am independent. I am in charge of my own life. You are also in need of some, he gave me a meaningful pause, company. I refused to take his meaning. I don't have time for company, I said. I had my shift at the station, my second job as a self-defense instructor, 10 hours a week of volunteering with Big Sisters, a marathon to train for, and weekends helping my dad build an addition to his house. I barely had time for sleep, much less company. Whose fault is that? Hernandez asked. Was that a real question? Company is not a priority for me. I'm not romantic. This is not about romance. It's about warmth, connection, human closeness. Sounds like romance to me. Call it what you want. You need some. What was happening? This was Hernandez. There was no way he could be serious, and yet his face looked so earnest. I kept scanning for some tell, maybe a little side smile or a spark of mischief in his eyes, but all I could find was that intense, unwavering, wild, weirdly earnest gaze. I hesitated. You are kidding, right? He had to be kidding. It was beyond off-putting for this person I'd been in mutual disinterest with for so long to suddenly, out of nowhere, claim to be interested. It was as if we'd agreed to play checkers, and he suddenly announced it had been chess all along. He lifted his hands to the edge of the table and absent-mindedly touched his finger to my unused knife handle. What if you're wrong about your entire life? What if I'm exactly what you've needed all this time? Don't you want to find out? Won't you always wonder if you don't? I repeat, this was Hernandez. This was the guy whose favorite joke was to try to throw me on the couch and fart on me. There was not one moment that had ever passed between us that could be classified as flirty or suggestive or even personal. But now he had me locked in this crazy conversation. His intensity with women was a famous hypnotic force. I'd seen him use it on countless targets with near-perfect success. He'd just never tried it on me. I should have been immune, but I was a little off balance in this fancy hotel, anticipating walking up on that stage. It's a hell of a thing to be recognized, to be honored, and it was clearly stirring my emotions in unexpected ways. And truthfully, Hernandez wasn't 100% wrong about me. Despite everything I knew about him and life and firefighters and myself, I confess, something about his whole shtick right now was entirely not working. I guess you can't keep your guard up all the time. Maybe I was lonelier than I'd realized. Maybe I did need something more. Maybe nothing in my life was quite what I thought. The problem was he just said things we were surprisingly true, which seemed unfair. To know me so well and then use it against me. Trapped in this strange moment, I was suddenly blinking at my entire life through a different lens. Was he right? Maybe I didn't even want to play checkers. It was the strangest moment of all time I'd spent with him. Stranger than the disco party, and stranger than the pie eating contest, and stranger even than the karaoke night that went off the rails. Hernandez. Of all people. We both watched his finger on the knife handle. He pushed it closer to me. You're tempted. I wasn't. Or maybe I was. Just a microscopic fraction. I thought about my sad Spartan apartment, its neat little row of herbs on the kitchen windowsill. I thought about my bed, always made with military precision, hospital corners and all, and how I never once had anyone in it besides me in all the time I've lived here. I thought about how quiet it would be when I got back, just the tick-tick of the kitchen clock. I knew exactly what going home to that apartment tonight would look like and feel like. The slight tightness I always felt on my face after I'd washed it with soap. The whiff of my laundry detergent as I slid my pajama top over my head, the sound of the sheets as I pulled them back and slid between them and tucked them carefully under my arms, the same bedtime routine over and over, endlessly, as safe and repetitive and dull as always. I could play it out to the minute in my head. I could even tell you what I'd think about as I fell asleep, the same thing I always did. I'd imagine making chocolate chip cookies, each step in soothing detail, from mixing in the butter to adding the vanilla, from cracking in the eggs to stirring in the chips. I'd watch the mixer blade spin and scrape the sides of the bowl with a rubber spatula. I'd scoop the dough with little half-sphere tablespoons, dropping them one by soothing one onto the cookie tray in neat, perfectly spaced rows. I hadn't baked cookies in years, but I thought about doing it every single night. What would it feel like to shake up that routine? You're the loneliest person I know, Hernandez had said. Suddenly I knew that was true, but that wasn't a reason for me to sleep with him. Sex was hardly a cure for loneliness, more likely the opposite. Hernandez, it was like if your high school chemistry partner suddenly propositioned you, or your dry cleaner, or your doctor. I was not, absolutely not going to sleep with Hernandez. That would definitely never happen. Probably. Without even realizing it, I held my breath. And then off to the side, 3 seats over, across the table, I heard a familiar, distinctive, telltale sound. The muffled, closed-mouthed snort that our engine operator, Big Tom, always made whenever anybody got pranked. My eyes snapped toward it. There was Big Tom, hand clamped over his mouth and nose, hunching down into a guffaw that he couldn't contain any longer. I'd seen him do that 100 times. He was the one who always broke. Oh, my God, I said, turning away. I scanned the rest of the table. The guys from our shift were all there to cheer for me on my big night. They'd been perfect gentlemen all night long, chewing with their mouths closed and everything. But once Big Tom broke, they all broke. In one scan, I saw it on every single face. Glee. Triumphant, practical, joke-infused glee. They'd gotten me. I turned back to Hernandez and punched him on the shoulder hard. Seriously? They'd never gotten me before, and not for lack of trying. What can I say? Nobody's perfect. Once the guys' restraint collapsed, it collapsed hard. They all started pointing and raising their arms in victory and cackling so hard they made the table shake. Riekman, Nolan, Trey, Big Tom, and especially Hernandez now hooting with delight, leaning back for air, turning red. I let them have a minute. They'd earned it. Then I started laughing, too, at the relief of it. As the world shifted back into a recognizable pattern and became familiar again, I took a deep breath of comprehension. Hernandez had not propositioned me. He had pranked me. Only a prank, thank God. When Hernandez finally settled enough to talk, he pointed at me. You totally bought it. I punched him in the shoulder. You freaked me out, dude. Tonight of all nights? We thought you could use a distraction, Hernandez said. Then he pointed at Big Tom. You torpedoed me, man. She was about to say yes. I was not. You were. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's getting girls to say yes. I'm not a girl. I'm a firefighter. And you were 1 second away. You wish. I threw a dinner roll at him. But he'd made some good points. I'd give him that. Maybe a few too many. Hernandez dug into his pocket for his wallet. Man, I just lost $20. The other guys pulled theirs out too. Never bet against Hanwell, Big Tom said, giving me a wink. The money came out and got shuffled around the table as the guys paid up, counting bills and collecting them. I watched Hernandez pay out a bunch and punched his shoulder again, harder this time. You bet against me? He shrugged with a sly smile. I know what I know. I'm irresistible. Up on stage, the program was starting. An MC fired up the mic as the waitstaff cleared away the plates and people rerouted their attention to the stage. It's my great pleasure, the MC said, to help honor our city's fire and rescue heroes here tonight. A huge cheer roared up from the room. Then the guys at my table started chanting, Cassie, Cassie, Cassie. I shushed them and made a cut gesture at my neck, but I smiled anyway, knuckleheads. I gave Hernandez one last glance, just a prank, and it had been a good distraction. Then we all got quiet. I sat straight in my chair, and all my nervousness roared back. I clasped my hands together on my lap, noted how cold they were, and then took a second to appreciate the ridiculous fact that nothing scared me, except apparently stages at banquets. I stared straight at the podium as I started calling up the honorees, fully dreading the moment when I'd heard my name. I was wearing pumps of all things with my dress uniform, and I was having a few issues with balance. I was not exactly a person who loved the spotlight. Plus, I'd have to speak. We'd been given 2 minutes each to say our thanks at the microphone, and 2 minutes seemed impossibly short and impossibly long at the same time. I had conscientiously typed out a paragraph I figured I could read out loud. How hard was reading, after all? Though as I watched the other honorees come up and read their prepared remarks, I started to think it must be harder than I remembered. They stumbled, mumbled, lost their place, and tripped on simple words over and over. I found myself wishing I'd practiced in advance, because I was the youngest ever honoree for my award, and a female of all things, and because this was the most prestigious award the department gave, and because the school bus angel was all over the news. They had saved my award for last. I was the grand finale of the night. The mayor himself was going to come out, hand me the award, and bask with me in the glory. I counted down as all the others walked up and then back to their places, my chest feeling tighter and tighter with nervousness. Finally, it was my turn. Almost done. I just had to get through the next 5 minutes and I could go home to my plants and my smooth sheets and my quiet, locked apartment. Folks, we've saved the best for last, the MC said as the guys from my shift all started whooping and drumming on the table. Our final honoree is the top of the top, and to present this last award, we've got a very special treat. A VIP is joining us tonight. We had hoped to have the mayor with us, but even though he got called away at the last minute on city business, never fear. We've got the next best thing. It's now my pleasure to cede the podium to Austin's very own homegrown city councilman. The MC turned to gesture toward the side of the stage, and in that second's pause, I heard myself say, "Oh shit, not the mayor." This was bad. Because I just knew, somehow, the name he was about to say next. I felt it coming. And I was right. "Heath Thompson," the MC called, then in a loud Price is Right announcer's voice, as if some lucky audience member had just won a new washer or dryer. And then it was like everything downshifted into slow-mo. The sounds of the words got deep and syrupy, and the clapping started to sound like 500 people beating on snare drums, and I watched in disbelief at the guy himself, Heath effing Thompson, walked out from stage left to join the MC there. Actually, strutty was more like it. I know that strut anywhere. The utterly infuriating gait of a man who fully believed the world would always let him have anything and everything he ever wanted, and he had never once been told any different. Should I have seen it coming? Should I have known better than to dare to want something for myself? Should I have assumed from the start that life would find a way to ruin this moment? Because I didn't. I hadn't. I was so gobsmacked to see Heath Thompson step onto that stage that I forgot to breathe entirely until Hernandez saw me frozen there and slapped me on the back. Then everything I knew blurred into one tiny pinprick of comprehension. At the proudest moment of my entire life, one that was supposed to honor everything I had worked so hard to achieve and become, I was going to have to receive my award from Heath Thompson. Heath Thompson, the only person in the world who could ruin it. Huh, makes you wonder who this Heath Thompson person is. Definitely something I'm going to continue reading. So that is everything for the mass market paperbacks on the first shelf. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you see in my next video. If there are any books that I read that you think I should keep or that you would be interested in that I'm getting rid of, let me know, because I am more than willing to send some of these books that I'm not going to read to any of my my fans, my subscribers. So just let me know and in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!